Welcome to the Music Business Buddy, the podcast decoding how the modern music industry actually works. I'm Jonny Amos, industry consultant, artist manager, producer, educator, and author of The Music Business for Music Creators. Every Wednesday, I explore the ideas, technology, and industry shifts shaping the future of music. This show helps creators navigate the rapidly changing business of music. Hi everybody, okay, I've got a treat for you this week, a very insightful conversation with a man by the name of John Hart, who is an A&R consultant and artist management specialist. Guys, I'm going to level with you about something. John Hart is one of the first guests that I ever wanted to get on this podcast, and just over 2 years into it now, I've finally got him on as a guest. He's a busy boy, right? This is how much I trust him. When I wrote the book, The Music Business for Music Creators, I needed to kind of get like a fact checker, right? Somebody that just, when the book was finished, go over it, right? And just make sure that everything that I said in that book was kind of like, is that right? Is that accurate, etc. Right? I mean, I was kind of hoping it would be the case, but nevertheless, hiring a fact checker when you write a book is actually quite a good thing, right? And so I brought in John, right? That is how much I trust him. As you'll see from the conversation today, he and I are pals. We have been for many years. We get on very well. We talk a lot, right? We talk a lot about football, but I won't bore you about that. We talk a lot about the music industry. We compare notes over the artists that we manage. We talk about new deals, new deal structures, all sorts of different things, new technologies, AI, all sorts of different things. He's a fascinating guy, and he's finally on the Music Business Buddy. I hope that you enjoy this conversation. I'm going to play it now. John Hart in the house. At last, you are here. Hello, mate.
At last. How are you, mate? Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too, man. John, I really appreciate you doing this because, I know what a busy boy you are. And, and I know, I've tried to get you on. I know it's hard, right, to find the time and stuff, but you are one of the most knowledgeable and valuable people I know, right?
You are so lovely.
It's true, man. It's true. So thank you for joining me. There's loads of things we could talk about, John, right? Because, but if you think about some of the things that you really specialize in, you know about a lot of stuff, but like artist development, artist management, these are things that you kind of like, moved into as your career's progressed. Yeah. You are currently managing how many artists for?
Yeah, it's kind of a shifting thing, actually, because I have a solid art roster, but I also do sort of consultancy management on kind of, so not ongoing, but, consultancy for a set period of time. So my current roster is 4 artists on a kind of more standard management roster. But then I'm also consulting on a couple of other projects as well. So one's a short-term project and one is a longer-term project. So in that instance there, I would probably call myself, and the artist would probably call myself their manager, but it's not quite the same setup, basically.
Yeah. Nothing's ever easy and straightforward in this business, is it?
No, it's not. But, I think we're probably going to talk about this quite a bit. I think one of the problems is that artists want things in so many different ways. And I think artists are very often skeptical of what management is or might be. They're very often ill-informed about what it is and what people like us do. So it's kind of understandable in the modern environment, really, that people would kind of look to vary and change that and chop it up. And, in the same way as record deals really have kind of chopped into different sizes and forms, and we went 360 and 180. I think just management now is about more flexibility.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, well put. Well, let's go straight in with a question about what you hope to see in an artist. So let's say, for example, because this is a question that I think a lot of artists would like to know the answer to, not just from you, but from a lot of people, really, which is, what do they need to do to get the attention of, a worthy manager that would then be able to look at them and think long term? Like what kind of things are you looking for in them if you think, they're worth developing long term?
I think the key phrase in there is long term. For me personally, it's about looking at that career and thinking, is this an artist with the potential to have a career in the industry rather than have a hit? Now, So that's very much about horses for courses. There are different management styles, different managers, different artists. I'm not that manager at all who will go for, okay, big hit, smash or bust, you know. I'm more about long-term sustainable career growth. But that kind of fits in more with where my career came from, and also my approach to the music industry. So most, in fact, all of the artists I think I manage are essentially you'd put them in that DIY camp, but I'm always a little bit skeptical about that. They are self-releasing artists around which we, i.e., we, the management team, and the artists working together, build the right team for that artist to move forward in relation to that career. So
Yeah,
that's what we're always looking to do. So I don't like the term unsigned or DIY, because I think in the modern industry, it's about pulling together the right team of people to do the right thing for that artist to move forwards, but also thinking about long-term sustainable careers. And that's very much my approach to management. So I never approached anyone for management. They've always come to me. And I think that key thing. I mean, obviously, there's the givens, talent. Um, I'm all about songwriting. I'm all about songwriting, and all of my artists are, I would say this, wouldn't I? But are all brilliant songwriters.
mm,
Because I just think in the modern industry, we've got to be able to look into all potential revenue streams and exploit them in all possible ways, and without songwriting being in the a part of the picture. Again, that's a different job for a different manager. Um, so they're all great songwriters. They're all great performers. They can all perform live solo, but with a band. So they have that sort of flexibility. So they're the kind of givens. But then what I'm really looking at is, like I say, that sort of ability to envisage what a long-term career looks like. And all of my artists are all about building audiences and building relationships with audiences. Um, and that's the way we go about things.
yeah, yeah. That's a refreshingly honest answer. I really appreciate you saying that. Do you
If
know?
someone came to me, Johnny, and said, "I want a major record deal," I would say, "I'm not the guy for you."
Yeah,
Pretty much.
yeah, yeah. No, that makes. If you look at, thinking about what you do with your artists, that fits the bill. You know, you come from that background of like, kind of build the mechanics yourself,
Yep.
get music to where it needs to be, in physical, in digital, and
Yep.
separating out those sides. And but what about, okay, so let's say, for example, working with one of your artists, then, how do you kind of balance that sort of artistic authenticity, but also try and build like the commercial growth opportunity? Because that's difficult
Yeah.
sometimes, right?
Authenticity is always that key word. I was talking about this with one of my artists yesterday, and we were reflecting on the nature of the industry we're in. And it's actually quite a very English thing to want to pigeonhole things into very strict genres. And if you move out of English or British, sometimes even English, that gets a lot easier, and it's not quite so picky, because the authenticity thing is really difficult, because a lot of my artists are inspired by West Coast Americana songwriting or country songwriting. And you could argue that, that therefore by default means that they lack authenticity. But in the world that we work in this kind of joined up digital world, where a young person's influences are as likely to have come from the West Coast of America as they are from Rochdale, um, then that makes its way into their songwriting. So I think what we're looking for is for an artist to have, and we're always looking to build with each artist, a very clear identity of what they stand for. So we're working really hard on brand, not in a big spend way, but just really good quality conversations about what are the values that this audience. Well, firstly, who is this audience? Where are they? What do they look like? Where do they shop? Um, and then when we know about them, what are the values that are going to get people to engage in you as an artist? And that might be kind of lyrically, melodically, it could be the songwriting, but also part of that is the look and the feel of things. So we're looking for authenticity in something that the audience can relate to and engage with.
Okay. Yeah, that's a sensible answer, as always, from you, Mr. Hart. Um, um, it's a funny one, authenticity, isn't it? Because um, I know that a lot of you and I are around a lot of young artists, right? That are kind of trying to make their way and forge their career, and they see a lot of stuff on social media, and they see a lot of AI clickbaity stuff, and
Yeah,
then
yeah.
it comes that subject of like how important authenticity is, and I get it to a certain degree. However, what do you think about this, right? Let's take someone like Mick Jagger, right?
Mm.
And we go, he's done pretty well for himself, right? But
Singing the blues.
yeah, and he's like, it's almost like he's a home counties boy, right? He's from the
Yeah,
southeast of England, but he sings like he's from like the deep south of America. And that's
exactly.
kind of, it's never really gone against him. And if you compare, let's go a bit more modern, let's say Adele, you look at Adele's singing voice compared to her talking voice, and it's quite different, but
Yeah.
but she's the near flawless artist. Like her songwriting, everything about her is completely and utterly authentic. That's one
and
of the
and
things that,
and unique,
yeah,
and you know it's her, and you can identify with all of those. Let's call them, for the sake of it, let's call them core values. What does that artist stand for? It's very, very clear. She keeps herself to herself. She's not in the public eye. All of those are quite specific core values around someone like that, and that ultimately is what we end up talking about when we talk about authenticity. Because in the joined up world that we live in, music's just, my kids growing up were as likely to find a skate punk band from the west coast of Australia as they were, do you know what I mean, someone in the UK, because when the world went like that through the digital explosion, everything became available. MySpace. Do you remember that,
yeah.
Johnny?
Oh, I certainly do. I certainly do.
So I think our influences get broad. I talk about this a lot with my artists, because authenticity for me is not about being non-American. It's about recognizing the influence that comes in from that great, great body of songwriting, but also making it feel utterly unique in your own space.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great way to put it. Um, can you walk me through a sort of specific artist growth story that you're
Yeah,
proud of, right? And the
yeah,
sort
yeah.
of the key decisions that kind of help to make the
Well,
difference.
you know me, Johnny. I'm never proud of them, because I'm never one to sort of rest on my laurels and go, I'm never one to sort of go, that's done and that's finished and that's achieved. And that, I guess that's probably one of my flaws as well, is that I'm not very good at going, we've done that, we've achieved that, isn't that great? I'm always like, what's next, what's next, what's
Yeah,
next? But one of my artists came very much out of the folk scene. And we started talking about working together. And obviously my history as a musician and an artist comes from that sort of folk acoustic sort of crossover scene. And that's where I worked as an artist for years and years and years. Um, so I tend to attract people within that sphere. And they'd made a brilliant first album, but it was very much in that folk mold. And the conversation we had went along the lines of, if that's the place where you want to stay as an artist, that's absolutely great. But I don't think that's where this relationship is going to be at its best. I think what this particular artist had is a real kind of fantastic pop sensibility in their songwriting, which was not really getting recognized in the genre within which it was in. And when me and the artist started talking, all the influences that come out, they're not necessarily from that. They're not all from that folk genre. They're all sorts of things. They're like Joni Mitchell, Joan Baez, but they're also through to, Jeff Buckley and, et cetera, et cetera. So we started talking about what songwriting is, and that's been a very long, slow development process where the artist is relatively successful within that folk world, but we're looking to sort of not move away from it, but develop the sound of the artist and recognize this real great sort of talent for songwriting. So the interim was we did an EP, and that worked really, really well. And then I sent that to a friend of mine at a publishing company. And I better be careful what I say here, but I sent it to a friend who is the head of Sync, a very well-known independent publishing company, with a view to, talking about publishing. because what we'd recognised is that in order to go forwards, we were going to need to engage a fairly good producer to kind of really mould this sound. We ended up doing a publishing deal with my mate's publishing company, which was good enough for us then to engage a producer. And the relationship with that producer has been such that it's more than, press record. It's the classic sort of producer role where the producer has been really, really involved in forging the sound, talking about these influences of, working out what this unique sound feels like. And that artist has been working with the producer now for 6 to 8 months on an album, just grabbing bits of demos and then bits of stuff in the studio, overdubbing, getting some session musicians in. It's kind of really weird because a lot of the vocal takes that have ended up on the album, which we've just about finished now, actually came out of those original demo sessions. Classic.
Ah.
So just not being afraid to go, what's the best thing? Doesn't have to be recorded in the best studio. It's like, what's the best thing for the track? And we've worked with a producer called Steve Osborne on that record, and Steve's just well, Steve, don't you? He's just he's a legend. He's a legend. U2, Kate Tunstall, discography as long as your arm, but he's just been absolutely brilliant in working with this particular artist and recognizing that the songs are there, but what really needed forging was that kind of sound and that arrangement. And they've spent a very long time doing it, and we've just finished that. And now, of course, that gives us finished product to do with what we want. And our conversation has always been, let's not limit it. We could self-release this, have a long-term relationship with Absolute Label Services, who I love. They're brilliant. The team there is fantastic. That's an option. But should we necessarily rule out a label because that's a well-prescribed route? And it's that thing I say about making sure the route for each artist is the right route for that artist at that time. What we're starting to find is there's a few labels bubbling up now that are really getting interested again in artist development, investing in sort of
Yeah,
longer
yeah.
term artist development. I
That's
think we
good.
saw a period where labels were just starting to think about quick fixes a little bit more. And, obviously the pressure on sales is immense on record labels. So, but we're starting to see a few labels think about artist development and, having conversations with a few labels there, and we'll make the right choices. And the key thing is not rushing the decisions, is making the right choices at the right time. So we have a finished album, which we could license, we could assign, but what we've been able to do there through that prescribed careful route is all the balls are in our court, so we can decide how we go forward. So I think that's kind of one of my key tips here, is just making sure you're in control of as much as you can possibly be in control of.
Okay, wow! What a fascinating case study. That's
Yeah.
like, well, first of all, mate, well bloody done, right? Because that honestly,
Well,
that's
it's not out yet, Johnny.
yeah, but setting up those partnerships, like it starts with that intervention of like, yes, you're folk, but there's a pop sensibility.
Yeah,
Let's go over here to work with the right publishing partner.
yeah.
Let's bring in the right producer. And that's absolutely superb. What's really interesting there, John, is a slight shift in your, I don't want to say blueprint, because you don't have a blueprint. You have loads of different
Yeah, no,
blueprints, right?
it's
But
interesting you pick up on that. I thought you might.
because you're an indie guy, right? And you're a do it yourself guy. Well, I know
Yeah.
we don't say do it DIY doesn't really mean do it yourself anymore. It never really did it?
Self-releasing.
But self-releasing. So that's a shift, right? But is that shift, John? Is it because you're looking at a licensing model for the album instead? So you're like taking it to a label and going, we can license this to you for X amount of time, and then get it back in, say,
Yeah. So,
5 years.
and I'm looking for that route, but it's that I'm not excluding that route.
Okay.
So because now we're in control of all of the assets. Okay, the publishing is done, and that's been used to fund the recording. But because we're in control of everything, we can look at everything. We could do an assignment deal on a record deal. We could do a licensing deal. We could retain all the rights ourselves and assign it. But one of the things I'm finding is, and this is I've always been, like you say, do it yourself, self-release, get it out there. But do you remember when? Well, of course you do, but some of your viewers may not. When the whole internet bubble burst, and there was a very conventional way of releasing music, and it changed overnight. And what we saw enter that space was lots and lots of companies to fill that space for getting music online to, DSPs. Ditto, DistroKid, lots and
Mm,
lots of providers coming into that space. What we've now seen as labels have been slightly more cautious about signing and more artists have been prone or encouraged to self-release and find those routes. What we've found is coming into that space is lots and lots of provision to help self-releasing artists get their music to where it needs to be, which is great, but it also, unfortunately, it comes at a cost.
mm,
There's lots of providers now. What we can plug your music to radio, and we can plug you to non-editorial playlists, and we can do, there's all these kind of huge raft of services you could bring in, but all of those ultimately come at a cost. So the costs in self-releasing have increased significantly over the last sort of 5 years. And capital really is something that is a big part of the equation. So if a record label is into the eyes, buys into the vision, because we're holding all the cards, we can decide. If they buy into the vision of what we want to do, and they're willing to put some investment into that journey, then we'll have that conversation.
mm.
But, ideally, if we can look at a sort of licensing deal, 3 to 5 year licensing deal, something like that,
That's pretty
because
good. That's pretty good.
yeah, I mean, they vary massively, obviously. You hear some horrific stories, but there are 5 year licensing deals around, 3 to 5. And this is that thing about long term vision, in that a 5 year licensing deal may to some artists feel like a long time. But the beauty of it is by the time you get to the end of that 5 years and you're now on to album 2, album 3 of your career is building, when those rights now revert to you, you're now in control of that catalogue and you can do with it what you wish. Because as we all know, there's residual sales around the new album into back catalogue. So it's that thing about making sure that you're either in control of all of your assets, essentially your publishing and your recordings, or you have a plan to be able to get them back and exploit them further down the line as your career develops.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. A very, very, very interesting model. God, that is so in keeping with the times we're in. Do you know, John, I'm just going to draw a connection to something that you've just said there to somebody who I met on the show a few months ago. Um, Elliot, who's the head of growth at Duetti, right? So,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
a fintech partner that would be very interested in speaking to you and your artist
Yeah,
5 years after. Let's say if you were to do that licensing deal, because one of the things that a fintech company would then do is to like pick up those masters 5 years down the line, and go right, we'll advance you for what we
yeah,
think you're going to make off that. You give us half of it. And the half that we take, we also plow into a mega marketing machine as well.
that's really
Um,
interesting.
so all of a sudden, that licensing deal over a sort of assignment of those masters then becomes okay. Let's just keep the publishing where it is and
Yeah,
look at that. But
yeah.
the recorded masters then become an actual long-term, scalable
Yeah,
financial asset, which is what we want artists to see their work as, right?
exactly. Exactly
Um,
that. And you can see if I just talk my camera around here a little bit, just my whole office is racks of merch. We self-fulfill from my office. Sometimes we use fulfillment companies. There's another cost.
yeah.
But sometimes with an artist, it's about me putting albums into a bag and walking to the post office and sending them out there. So if that's the journey, but that the important thing about that is owning the catalog, because then obviously you can press the catalog, etc. So getting that catalog back to build the value in that catalog. And of course, the thing is here, we're not talking about your massive selling artists. We're talking about your hard-working day-to-day, getting out there artists. That catalog is a massive part of the jigsaw. The way I try and think of it, and we always talk about this with the artists, is we've got to think about every single revenue stream and how are we exploiting that revenue stream to its maximum potential. Where's our neighbour in? What's happening? The publishing deal we just referred to, I hope and I really plan for that to be a long-term, really fulfilling publishing deal where the publisher is bringing syncs and bringing co-writes, and that's already starting to come to fruition. Co-writes have come in, and as soon as we signed that deal, a sync came in for the artist
Oh, wow. That's
on
great.
Home and Away. Who knew
Oh,
who knew Home and Away was a thing? But apparently it's a massive thing. You know, still streams around the world and blah blah blah. We've got some stuff onto Home and Away, and other royalties are coming in. It's like there's a revenue stream, you know.
wow.
So it's
You,
just like,
you've got a track record of sync placements in Australia. What's that all about?
well, I just have connections. So my connection to Australia is the longest term artist I've been managing is a wonderful man called Blair Dunlop. I've been working with Blair for about 12 years, maybe
Wow.
it might be nearly 15. And when I first started working with Blair, he was signed to a small independent record label, and we set up that's how we developed the relationship with Absolute Label Services. But also Blair's publisher is Stuart Ongley from SGO Music, which is sub-publishing through BMG, but Stu's an Aussie. And to be honest, it's down to Stuart. He took Blair out. He helped us take Blair out there on Blair's first tour. And Blair's now been out to Australia 5. It's just been in February, March, maybe the 5th, 6th time. Festival runs and shows. So
Wow.
we've developed quite an audience there. And, you know, he's worked it as hard as one can work Australia. So, yeah, that works really well. So obviously, and the Australian music industry, I find it to be really beautifully open to collaborative working. There's an organisation called Sounds Australia who promote Australian artists around
Oh,
the world.
yeah. They're really
And
proactive.
they're just so good, and
Yeah.
they I don't know. I was at a conference, Folk Alliance, which is a kind of, it's like a mini South by Southwest for the kind of acoustic folk industry. And Sounds Australia are there, and they're just having a meet and greet dinner, and like, here's our Australian artists, and here's our UK managers and agents, and that's just, you know, they're just doing very positive, proactive work to just kind of create engagement.
Mm,
And I like the way over there. They're very positive. But
yeah.
yeah.
That's
So
good.
I mean, we try and do that in every territory. You know, Blair's been into Canada, and US is obviously a little challenging these days for various reasons, which probably we won't go into. But you know, visas in the US is just pretty much impossible at the moment.
Yeah. Maybe that'll
But
clear up in due course, but
I
yeah,
think it
yeah,
probably will.
yeah. That's interesting to hear about the Australian stuff because I mean, a big hello to Australian listeners because I do get a lot of listeners on this show
Really,
from
yeah.
Australia, yeah, and it always seems like so far away, yet they're so connected to everything that's going on in
It's
music and media.
incredible. It's incredible, and it's down to organisations like, but their collection societies are very proactive as well.
Yeah.
You know, and APRA have got an office in London, and they do songwriting camps, and you know, they're
Yes.
just really supporting Australian artists all the time. And I mean, there used to be a thing that the Australian industry was 10 years behind the UK industry, I just don't find that to be the case anymore.
No, I think maybe it was at one point. I don't think it is anymore. I was
Yeah,
talking to Ralph W. Peer from Peer Music on the show a few months back,
yeah, yeah,
and he's really active in Australia.
yeah, yeah,
You know, and like he sets up some big camps in Australia for people from all over the world to go there, and he's really positive about
yeah.
what's happening there. So yeah, good for
It's
you
a
for
great scene out there. It's a great festival scene. It's a great touring scene. I mean, obviously the drives are a bit longer, but you know, some good venues, good promoters. I think they're struggling a little bit recently because of the whole situation that's going on in the Gulf. Because obviously most of the flights to and from Australia go through Dubai. I mean, we certainly came a cropper on the last tour because all of our flights got diverted at great cost.
oh
Yeah,
gosh.
but you know, that can't be helped. So
You mentioned about neighbouring rights there a moment ago, John. I know you and I have spoken before, sort of off air,
yeah,
let's say, about neighbouring
yeah, yeah.
rights. I'm definitely seeing like an increase in neighbouring rights collection, globally, but also it is a rather complex beast in as much as that.
Do you mean an increase in the amounts coming in, or do you mean in the number of providers in the space?
Both really. I meant on the number of people's NR royalties going up. In
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but certainly there's a lot more people out there. I think one of the things that I've noticed is that a lot of artists don't necessarily know that they've got neighbouring rights available to them.
Mm.
And B, knowing what to do about it, because sometimes when you go directly to a CMO to look for help on it, it can be quite slow. And
Yeah, I mean, it's you may have covered it on this this podcast in the past, and I'm not going to be critical of any one organisation, but PPL website feels a little bit clunky at times. Probably the best way to phrase it, and responses, like you say, they can be a little bit slow, and sometimes it's really difficult to work. I mean, what I find artists don't understand, the key one in a world where artists are self-releasing more and more and more, what that actually means is they are being record labels. But what they don't understand is what that means is they've got the rights owner share to
mm,
pull in as well as the performance share. And I spend a lot of time on consultancies. First thing, just doing that. It's
yeah,
like you've been claiming your performance share, but you've not actually claimed your rights owner's share, and you're actually the label. So, there's revenue there. And that's the thing is like, where's those pockets of revenue? The same thing happens on mechanicals as well. If an artist doesn't have a publishing deal, they don't always realize, and they've been on a label, they don't always realize they've been paying mechanicals. And one of my artists, we've self-registered them for MCPS, and they've been paying mechanicals for 4 years over a pretty, within its niche, successful album. And there's a chunk of money sitting there to collect.
yeah,
So, yeah, knowing is difficult. Advice and guidance is difficult. There are a number of people who do kind of neighbouring rights packages. I deal with Absolute. We have the option of a neighbouring rights package, which we use on one of the labels, but not on the other. And that works really, really well. Essentially, it's about how well plugged in digitally the organisation is that's doing it,
yeah,
and what can they bring in terms of data management and ultimately revenue beyond what the PPL, the CMO systems are bringing us in. But it is an increasing area because digitally players are more able to be tracked. So, on Apple Music for Artists now, you can see all your radio plays on the app. That's great because now you can start to track where things are getting played, not only on the songwriting but on the recording side, and you can actually go, look, this has been played here. Is this? You can start to check if it's coming through, and sometimes it requires that fastidious going through statements, going, I know it's played here. We've seen that one yet. It can be a bit of a pain, but I think I'm a firm believer that it's all sitting out there in the pennies, and if you go and bring the
yeah.
pennies in, the pennies become pounds.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's an old saying that's never true, never been truer when it comes to neighbouring rights.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, that
yeah,
that falls in line with a lot of the people that I talk
yeah,
to on the podcast about neighbouring rights, and just the fact that there are just so many different nuances around the world on where things work differently in Australia for things work differently in America. They
yeah,
don't really exist in America. Okay, they've got sort of digital performance rights
yeah,
through
yeah, yeah.
things, but it's not quite the same thing.
Totally.
Yeah, that's but yeah, I think the
I'd love it if we could get to a space where we have independent publishing sector alongside the song. I'd love it to get to a space where there's as much choice for people to manage neighbouring rights on the recording side, and then you can start to really choose based on people's performance and how what percentages of royalties are they pulling in, and also you'd expect a music publisher to work your catalogue. Obviously, now if you're on the label side, you're being the label. But why couldn't a collection? Why couldn't an organisation who was looking after neighbour rights promote the catalogue of the recordings in the same way as a publisher does the songs?
yeah,
I think
that
there's a space in the market there, really. But I'm
yeah.
sure you will tell me someone's in it now.
I do know people in that space. Yeah, yeah. But not so much in the UK. Weirdly,
Yeah, yeah,
like I met a guy again through the podcast recently called Amit Dubey, who runs Beat Street Music Publishing and rights management stuff in India, and he was telling me that in India, so many of the labels are actually publishers as well, and they
yeah. They
work
sent
on that
out.
side.
I toured India years ago as a musician. I mean, it's not at all like it is now, but I worked there as a consultant for a music school there as well, doing some work. And they tend to have a much more kind of 360 approach to things where they're managing all of the portfolio of assets for the artist. Same really in China. I
Yeah.
did some consultancy out in China. I remember going and talking about how because obviously copyright is didn't exist essentially in China. Really, it's a fairly new initiative, and I would say, well, how are you managing artists' careers if there's no intellectual property? And their response was, we don't care about intellectual property. We just make them celebrities. And I just thought, yeah, I can see that mirrors into our industry in some places as well, you know. So they do, yeah, they have a much more kind of 360-degree kind of approach to things. We're very fragmented in the UK, and I think what that gives us is a great choice and a very kind of buoyant, diverse market, but also makes things very confusing.
Yeah, 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 it does. Things can slip through the radar
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, yeah.
because to some music creators, you know, the neighbouring right side is, well, that's a label thing, and then to other people, it's like, well, no, that's actually your publisher could do that, and then it's like, no, that publisher can't. They have a partnership, but they don't do that. Therefore, maybe I can
Yeah.
just go to, you know, I was talking to a company today called Lime Blue.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they're really good.
Yeah. We
And
have one artist where the publisher also manages neighbouring rights for us,
Okay, okay,
just because they set up with the systems for it. So they do it. That was an early arrangement. They do it for us, and they do it really well.
yeah,
But then another artist, we do it as a kind of add-on through Absolute, and then another artist, we don't really have it in place yet. But with that artist, we're just about to go into big album campaign. So that's on my list here to tidy up a few things, get into PPL, and sort out dots and metadata.
yeah, yeah. No, that makes. Have a look at Lime Blue for that option. They're very good. They're
Well,
very good. What are the? This is a bit more of a generic question here, John, but I'm interested to see what you think about this. What are the biggest mistakes that you notice emerging artists making when it comes to growing their careers too quickly?
yeah. Uh, I think one of the things I see is getting into DSPs, getting into Spotify too early. This kind of thinking that we've got to have a track out there, but not actually knowing who the audience is. And I know there's a strong argument for saying you could use Spotify to grow the audience, but this is probably a reflection on the way I do things. I'm a firm believer in building audiences in ones and twos, and kind of getting to know them and build them. Um, all of one of my artists, but most of them do really well, connect really well through mailing lists. We're having good, authentic conversations. So they tend to get onto Spotify really early and then not really kind of think about what it's there for. And sometimes the music that's released early onto DSPs is not the standard that they should be aspiring to. So releasing not good enough music too early, maybe that's the answer.
Yeah,
Just wait until you've got something which is more than 100% represents what you are. I know there's no more than 100%, but you know, I very often meet with artists and they go, "Well, I put that out, but is it good?" But it's okay. You kind of think it's all right. It shouldn't be there.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
It shouldn't be there. I want you to say to me, it's the best thing I can do right now, given my constraints, which might be money, might be time, whatever. Given my constraints, that is absolutely represents me, and that is the best thing I can do right now. And then what we then tend to do is we don't really view. We still pitch for editorials and non-editorials, and you know all of those things. We play all of those games, but for us, Spotify is not really a revenue generator. It's more a discovery platform.
yeah,
So it's making sure that you treat your Spotify profile as a social media platform. Images, biog, is your merchandise available there? You know, or are your gigs plugged in? So thinking of it as a social media page more than thinking of it as a as a retail platform. And artists will very often go into that space without having thought about those other things. And you know, you're not going to make anything unless you sort of get plugged straight into a New Music Friday or a really good playlist, and that's great if you do. But it's unlikely that, given the odds, you're going to get that massive boom on the first release. But if someone scrolls down and they see that you're playing in their town and there's a great image there and the bio really connects in terms of reference points, oh look, they've got an EP out and I can actually buy it through a Shopify account and I can get it mailed to me. That that level of engagement, I think having a plan for that level of engagement is what's really, really important.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. John, do you find that like because we're in a time now where you can an artist okay, so I'll say it well I really think, right? So when an artist says, I was doing that music 2 years ago, it no longer represents me, I'm gonna go over here instead. It's logical, it makes sense, and it's kind of a clean exit point algorithmically, right? So you don't create any sort of distortion and going, that's what I used to do now. It makes sense. However, it does open the door into kind of going, let me just erase my past and start again, which in the physical world, of course, you could never do. You just have to leave it there and go, well, oh, yeah, I don't like it anymore, but it represented me then, and this is where I am now. And, it is that kind of, because we can erase the past effectively, is that kind of making artists more pedantic?
God, that's such a great question. I mean, it's not something I normally deal with because my artists are in. It brings that authenticity question, doesn't it? My thought artists that I work with are who they are, and they couldn't even contemplate really making any other music. They write the songs that they write, and they fall out. We can talk sometimes about the way that they're shaped, like we did with the production conversation, but ultimately the songs are the songs. They did literally. I guess what you're talking about there is changing genres and changing names and creating a new profile, i.e., that's how you delete the past. But eventually, for me, maybe I'm old, maybe this is my age. Authenticity just comes through, and if you're skipping into a new genre that you've not lived in, I think people will start to see it
Mm,
and see that kind of lack of authenticity. What you're really doing now is you're just chasing numbers. And when you ask me what am I looking for in an artist, not that.
yeah,
What
yeah.
I'm looking for is just I want you to know who you are. Not have fully realised it yet, but know who you are, know what you do, and have a really clear idea of how you want to develop that, and in what capacity. What promoters might you want to work with? What venues might you want to play at? What labels do you think are the right labels for you? Is it labels? Is it about autonomy? Is it about just I want artists to come to me and have a strong idea, and I want to have arguments with them.
Yeah.
I talked to one artist yesterday about um, kind of a cluttered up space on DSPs and like, would it make sense to think about a name change and stuff like that? And the artist was like, absolutely not. It's my name.
Yeah.
But I like that. I like that to and fro. So I think it's really important to have that and to have that dialogue because it helps you really forge out the look and the feel of the thing.
Mm.
But yeah, I don't know. I do
I
see a
think
lot of artists. I mean, I do know one. We know one person who was literally making music and plugging it in through some management company label type set up in Miami, who was getting millions and millions and millions of
oh,
streams, and
yeah,
has
yeah.
and has now moved on to other things because it's just got that kind of lift up. So there's an argument for doing that, but yeah, difficult. Not really the world I'm in.
Yeah, but then what he was doing was something very specific in house
Yeah,
music, right? That
yeah,
that that
hugely. Yeah,
it was like it was absolutely there, and he wanted to go over there and start doing something else, and
he was quite happy to acknowledge that this is not really where I want to be. I want
yeah,
to be over here, but this gets me here. I mean, what was he sitting on at one time? 32 million monthly listeners or something,
yeah, yeah,
which is
yeah,
crazy, right?
yeah, yeah.
But that was a world I don't really know. That person spoke to me and you about management and lawyers and accountants, and we gave them a lot of help. But I wouldn't have ever offered to manage it an artist like that because I just don't know that world in that way.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's fair. So John, we spoke quite a lot about like the things that artists can be doing in order to kind of prepare themselves. I suppose to
Yeah,
cut a point, put a fine point on that. Patience is a part of it, right? Kind of like instead of going too soon,
yeah,
when you're 20, 21, doing a couple of singles, disappearing for a year, actually hold everything back. If you're not ready until you're 27, don't worry, you'll make a bigger impact when you're 27 with all that back catalogue, right? But outside of that sort of artist development realm, let's say, what changes? do you see ahead in the music industry that artists need to be aware of?
I mean, the obvious one, which you've covered really well on here, is where AI takes us. And, people will fall down on both sides of the debate and, how do you feel about AI? In my world, there was a successful folk artist who had an album appear on their Spotify profile that they'd had nothing to do with at all.
Yeah.
It was completely AI generated in their name on their Spotify profile. And had mirrored their songwriting and their voice. I mean, anyone who knew the artist could instantly tell it wasn't them. But anyone who was a sort of superficial fan of the artist could have been convinced that it might have been them. I mean, the songs were rubbish, obviously, but they got it taken down. But I see benefits to AI when it's helping us do the work that we need to do on a daily basis. Uploading metadata, the painful tasks, long-winded tasks that our friend Eric always says, when asked what's the most important skill in the music industry, he will always respond, a solid command of Microsoft Excel, which
Yeah.
is a great answer. But there are things to help us do those things now, which are brilliant because they make the workflow faster, which allow us to think about the creativity. But when it interferes on the creative side, and this is probably an age thing for me, but I worry about that. I worry about infringements on intellectual property. I worry about where it's going. I worry about our government's take on it. That sort of divide between do we go with AI and make ourselves at the front of AI, or do we stick with the value in IP and the kind of creative industries? That's a big concern. I I don't really fully know how it's going to play out. The old punk rocker in me would say, hopefully, it just all eats itself, and we end up with two music industries: one which is entirely AI generated, which is utter nonsense, and then over here we've got this vibrant space of creators just making amazing music. But it'll never be that binary, will it? So I think AI is a difficult one. I think one of the things that we kind of referred to earlier is because there's such a fragmentation in our marketplace now. There's a tendency for different providers of services to want to get involved really early. I'll be your manager. I'll be your plugger. I'll do your PR. And there's a tendency to think that you need to take those things on really early because that's some kind of indicator of success. But actually holding those off and making sure that you've got a really solid plan for what you want to do, and then you engage the right people to do the things that you want to do at the right time, is a much more prudent approach. So patience has always been the way in the industry, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but patience not to the point, because we also know those people who sit in their bedrooms producing tracks and arguing with himself about the delay, the length of a reverb for weeks and weeks and weeks, and never let anything go out. And then when they let someone hear something, they realize that no one cares about the reverb or the snare. It's like they're not even hearing it, and you've messed around with it for 20 hours. And they're so protective of their work, they never let it go. So it's being patient, but to the point where when you get something that you're fully confident in, then being bold enough to go for it and to put your neck out there and go, I'm good. This is good.
Yeah, that's really, really nice advice. Very, very, very well put. Yeah, it's there's a lot to think about, isn't there? Because on the one hand, an awful lot has changed in this business and continues to change all the time. But the same thing that underpins absolutely everything about it is that we love it, right?
Yeah. I
We
mean,
love it. And it's we need it, right? Look and think about like how algorithms work. They're completely and utterly reliant upon the flow of new music. And new can be new, and new can be undiscovered
yeah,
old and all that kind of stuff.
yeah,
But
yeah.
like, we can have music that's sat there dormant for years that all of a sudden finds its audience and then bam, off it goes. But then you
I,
still need to pick up all those other
yeah.
things.
I always, because I was a releasing artist, I was in a touring artist. We toured the world for years. We were signed to Cookie Vinyl, and
Yeah.
we were signed to Pure Bliss, which became the Big Chill. We were signed to Zomba
Yes.
Records and
Yeah.
BMG Publishing. We toured the world, blah blah blah. And I always thought that I wouldn't find the same buzz in management as I did in that. I would argue that I find more buzz in management than I did in that.
Really?
Because with that comes the being away from home and the touring, which I used to love, but then it got to a point where can I envisage myself at 65 years old lifting a Fender Twin out the back of the car at 4 o'clock in the morning? No. No, I can't. But what I love is working with the guys I work with and just pushing, and it's really hard. Constant and utter rejection all of the time. What is it that makes us just go again and go again and go again? I think Einstein would what's the Einstein quote? Doing the same thing over and over and again and expecting different results is the definition of insanity. We're insane. We're insane, but we're creatives as well. And I just, that constant rejection, and then you get that little glimmer of, literally had it yesterday, talking to an artist about one needing a certain thing to happen and it wasn't happening. And was this person doing something wrong, or was this not working? And then at the end of the day, an email came through. It's like, oh, we've got you this. Bing.
Right.
That's the thing we needed.
Yeah.
Just came,
you know? Well, that's good. Okay.
And then you go, okay, there's hope. And you go again and you go again. So yeah, I mean, we're relentless. We're idiots.
Do you know what, John?
What else would you do?
That's true. Yeah. But the idea of rejection there is an interesting one, right? Because I used to think that when I was younger, okay, I've had loads of rejection, but like that'll stop as you get older, right?
No,
it doesn't, does it? It just
it just takes a different form.
Yeah.
It just what the thing that changes is not the rejection; it's your resilience too.
Yeah.
So when you get to our stage in life, you don't even really hear it. You just go, okay, whatever next, whatever next. Whereas at an earlier stage in your career, you're more prone to kind of go, oh, that really hurt. That rejection really hurt. Whereas we don't feel the pain anymore.
Yeah. Do you know, you're totally right, mate. I wish with all my heart that I could get that message across to emerging artists that rejection is absolutely a necessary part of this path. But the trouble is, you only actually realise that with experience, don't you? And I suppose that's like a lot of things in life.
You do, but it also, there's that kind of natural selection element to it. It creates some natural wastage because, when you ask me what are the things that I look for in an artist, the other thing I didn't say is that drive, that like, no, I'm doing this. Yeah, no, I'm doing this. That drive is absolutely important. And if that drive's not there, it may not be the industry for you. And the rejection might be a kind of natural way of finding that out, because if you don't take rejection well, you're not going to succeed.
Yeah. Oh God, absolutely. God, it's very reassuring. You and I, well, we've known each other for years.
We all
right?
say the same things.
We do, don't we? It's so funny, isn't it? When I'm doing like consultancy work for artists, and I'll kind of look at ideas and say, this would be a good partner. Not just yet, but after this, that would be the right time for this partnership. So I'll set that up and get you talking together. But when you talk to them, don't ask them for help. Right. And also make it really clear, without being aggressive in any way, make it really clear that this thing that you're going to do, you're going to do it anyway, with or without them.
It's path.
Yeah. So which actually makes you more, more appealing anyway, actually.
Exactly that.
Yeah.
They're on the path, because then my job as a manager is more difficult to define, and I need to work harder to define it, because I'm like, well, you're on that path. I need to now let you know when I'm adding value to that, because if I'm not adding value, there's no point in the relationship.
Yeah, good point.
And that's the key thing. And being a manager is about knowing when it's not working as well as when it is working.
Yeah,
but that's a whole different podcast.
Yeah, well, we'll do that one another time then. John, thanks so much, man, for being here. I
love what you're doing, Johnny. It's amazing. I'm a big fan of it, as you know, and all power to you, buddy.
Oh, mate, likewise. Big love, mate. Okay, there you have it. Insightful dude, right? He's done it all, in the music industry. He has been an artist, right? As you probably heard him talk about just a few moments ago there. He was signed to Zomba. He's done all sorts of things as an artist. He's toured the world. And then he kind of, transitions into artist management and A&R consultancy. He's very respected by a lot of labels and publishers. He's very, very well connected. And, he's well connected because he works hard. He's very trustworthy. And he's a great guy, right? A really, really great great guy. I'm just so grateful that he finally came on the podcast. It's been so hard trying to get him on, not because he's awkward or anything, because he's a busy boy, you know. Anyway, he was here. It's done, right? Another box ticked in life. John Hart on the podcast. That's how much it meant to me. I hope it meant something to you too. He dropped some gems in that episode. If there's anything you missed, just roll back and just listen to some of the stuff he said or read the transcript. I guarantee, you can't give many guarantees in the music industry, can you? But I guarantee someone somewhere will have learned something from the things that he said. I hope that I am talking to you when I say that. Okay, enough from me today. Have a great day, everybody, and may the force be with you.